Giants statement before we got on the air. We have to get a perspective down there in Florida, Miami. Andy Slater, at Andy Slater, talk show host, on-air personality, weekdays 3 to 5 on Fox Sports 640 and iHeartRadio. I'm sure he's got a pretty good pulse of what's going on there with Flores and Miami and the likes. Andy, appreciate a couple moments, pal. How you been?
I've been well. Rich, you could call me any time and ask me how Miami sports are doing, and I'll always tell you it's a mess. You're always going to get that same answer.
Yeah, right? I mean, listen, we've got the Giants, the Jets, and the Eagles in our backyard, so I can kind of, to some extent, my friend, say the same thing. And I guess the first thing, when this all transpires, when the accusations, the allegations come out from Brian Flores, not only with the Giants and basically the integrity of the Rooney Rule, and then the allegations against Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, with these $100,000 bribes for losing games. I mean, I would imagine where you guys are, it probably just kind of sent shockwaves, correct?
It did. I mean, it did in a way because it's brand new. But I say in a way because in Miami, and when I say it's always a mess, I mean, it really is. We had Bullygate several years ago,
yep.
And that was a huge scandal. We've had an assistant coach snorting cocaine in the office, in the facility. So we're used to this kind of stuff. But to say it was not a surprise, that wouldn't be the truth.
Yeah.
The main thing is, it's like, where is the evidence?
Yep.
That's what I'm always thinking of.
Yep.
And a lot of you guys and you and your audience have seen the lawsuit, and you saw Flores on television. And I don't know all of the evidence in this case. I don't know what he has. The only thing I know is what you guys know, and that's what he presented and what his attorneys presented. And it just seems to me that there's not going to be any receipts here from Stephen Ross. I mean, it just seems like it might have been said, and I don't know if it was a joke, but I don't think he's going to have any evidence. Maybe he does. But if he doesn't, then I don't know what this is really all going to be about, as far as, okay, he told me he's going to give me $100,000 a game to lose, which apparently he declined.
Right. Yeah, that's the smoking gun, right? Where the body's buried at the end of the day, because I can't imagine it's like, writing off a gas receipt, writing it off with the taxes. Like, where's the paper trail? And, I commend Flores for coming out and taking the shot here, because, you're going against a behemoth that is the Shield, the NFL, and that can squash you. These guys can squash you, and then you get into there might be some counter lawsuits for defamation of character because of what he's said with the Giants and, of course, Ross, and now Elway and the likes in the Denver Broncos. So I believe, and this is just my thought, and you tell me what you think, if he didn't have something that was concrete, then why even do this? Because this opens up such a can of worms where at the end of the day, you might be untouchable. Your chances of maybe getting a head coaching gig, a job again, they might all but vanish with this.
I was listening to an interview yesterday that Flores was doing on National Public Radio, and he said that he was going back and forth in his mind if he should file this lawsuit or not. And then when he started getting the text messages from Bill Belichick, that made up his mind. But I will say, what I believe, you look at the Broncos, you look at the Giants,
yep.
You look at the Dolphins with owner Stephen Ross. On Wednesday, Brian Flores was on all these national TV shows. Wednesday was Brian Flores' day to talk. And I think the NFL and all the teams that I just mentioned, they were sitting back and they were nervous. They were like, let me see what he's got here. Let's see what he and his attorneys have here. And at the end of Wednesday, when Wednesday came around 10 p.m. and he was done talking, I think that's when all the teams said, we don't think he has a whole lot.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that he doesn't, but then you saw the statements come out. And I feel like those statements started coming out because they felt he's not going to have a strong case with evidence. He's not going to have John Elway's bar tab if he was out drinking the night before, which Elway denied. He was on a flight that got in pretty late. So when we started seeing these statements come out, I think that kind of said what these teams really think about the evidence that he's got in this case.
That's an excellent point you bring up. And right, I mean, they feel, look, this guy's got nothing. And I hate saying this, and I went back and forth with my listening audience on the air as well as on social media. You always try to give the benefit of the doubt. You know, some people believe where there's smoke, there's fire. But maybe this is a case of, and I hate to say it like this, of sour grapes. But again, you know, you've got to have the wherewithal to realize once you open this can of worms, like even the Belichick, I maintain Belichick actually sent those texts on purpose, because if it turns out that they were trying to court Tom Brady on that yacht, and I know there's been some speculation reports it was Watson, but if it was Brady, that was Belichick's guy. Whether their relationship was frosty or icy, they won 6 Super Bowls together. So for me, it's like Belichick trying to get back at an AFC East rival, let alone the NFL. So you got the text messages there, and the confusion and the miscommunication. But a lot of people are looking at it now, Andy, and saying, well, I think this is a little bit of sour grapes. And I don't know if you can go out and necessarily proclaim it 100% sour grapes. I guess, you know, what's the end game, right? Because you know this. You're down in that area. We heard there was some friction with him and the players and ownership. And maybe this is just who this guy is. Maybe he wants to make waves. I don't know. I can't speak to that. I have to rely on someone that's in that area that knows the team much more than I do.
Well, I would just say on Flores' part with the evidence, again, as far as a strong case that he has, and attorneys could hold back things, but it just seems like, okay, if you're going to hold back things, why didn't you hold back the Bill Belichick text messages? So there's no evidence in there. Why would you not include evidence of the $100,000 that Stephen Ross was going to pay you per loss? My thinking, again, I don't know exactly what the attorneys could be holding, but my thinking is, well, there is no evidence. It was just said to him verbally. Right. And we're talking about a federal lawsuit here.
Of course.
So you're going to need you're going to need receipts. You're going to need proof. It can't just be, oh, well, this person said it, and you know, that's not evidence. You've got to have hard proof here, and without it, I don't know what kind of a change is going to happen. I don't know what he's going to get out of it, as you were saying. But what he says he wants to get out of it is change in the NFL. He wants more black head coaches in the NFL, and we know the situation with that. We know that there's 32 billionaire white owners, and there's only one black head coach. Can you say that there's racism and discrimination in the league? I mean, sure, you could. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. And when the Rooney Rule came out, I think we all kind of felt the same way. And that is, okay, well, now because of this rule, you're going to have to bring in a black head coach, even if you don't think he's the best candidate. And now you're having all these black head coaches interview when they really have no chance at the job. And the only thing with that is maybe you bring somebody in who you wouldn't have and they really blow you away.
Right. And
it gives the minority an opportunity. But I think a lot of people felt the same way about the Rooney Rule. Flores obviously did, and he's not happy about the way his process went down and how it's going for other people. But another thing that you've got to remember, this is a class action lawsuit. So there could be other coaches in the league that may join this lawsuit, and his attorney said he thinks that they will, and maybe they will have some evidence. You know, this may not be just Brian Flores and what he has. Maybe there's going to be some other coaches that could cause harm to the NFL or some other teams.
Yeah, it might be the classic he said, she said, to your point, and you're right. I mean, the Giants, what are they guilty of, right? They're kind of guilty of not with you know, holding up the integrity or the spirit of the Rooney Rule. I mean, they had to come out. They combated the accusations. Ross combated the accusations. Denver combated the accusations. It is a mess. I think it's going to get uglier. And again, you know, you got to put
it is.
Yeah.
Let me just say one thing there while you mention the Giants again. Because yesterday, and I believe this was on the NPR interview, Brian Flores said that he believed or he knows that Bill Belichick had an influence in the Giants hiring Brian Dable. And when I heard that, and look, I think Flores is a nice guy. When he was with the Dolphins, I always thought he was a nice guy. But when I heard that, I'm thinking about any job. Like any job in America, you have references. You call them. Hey, what do you think about this person? And that's just how America works with jobs. You're calling people, even at a radio station, whatever it may be. Hey, what do you think of this guy? Hey, he's a great worker. He's good on air. Okay, thank you very much. And that may give you the edge. That may get you in the door quicker. That's how it works with all jobs in America. It's just called references. So if the Giants somehow spoke with Bill Belichick and as a reference, and hey, this is about Brian Dable, well, I don't know if there's anything really wrong with that.
No, and remember, too, Flores, going back to Flores, he's worked with Belichick for close to a decade, and you're right. And Belichick's relationship with the Giants, I think people would argue, well, why would Bill be privy to that information prior to an interview? And look, you and I have been doing this a long time, long enough where I'm sure because I've said this several times, I've gone for radio interviews, play-by-play, TV spot, and I knew going in I probably wasn't what they were looking for. But I still took the interview because they're far and few, and I always want to make that impression. So I go back to your smoking gun at the end of the day. I can't just sit there and say I was offered $100,000 to lose games. Well, where's the proof? And I think what's going to happen here is you're going to have more people come out of the woodwork, and we know how the shield works. We know what the NFL does. They're going to turn around, and they're just going to cut that check, and Flores is going to go on his merry way. That's what I believe is going to happen.
And another thing that you have to look at in this whole deal, especially in South Florida, what's taking right now the headlines? And I'm sure, on a wagering show, you're talking about the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, in South Florida and in many other places other than wagering shows or in Cincinnati or Los Angeles, you're hearing the names Brian Flores and Stephen Ross more than Matthew Stafford and Joe Burrow.
That's right.
And when Roger Goodell does his annual news conference next week before the Super Bowl, what questions are going to be thrown his way? It's not going to be about a 17-game season. It's not going to be about anything like that. It's going to be all about this lawsuit. And Brian Flores, he knows that.
Yeah.
The timing on this.
Oh,
he knew exactly the timing. His attorneys knew the timing, and now it's overtaken all the headlines right before the Super Bowl.
Timing is everything in life, right? And I'm glad you brought up the sports betting element because my station, my show, our station, is sports gambling centric. It was the first terrestrial station in the country to have 24/7 sports gambling content. We always talk about the dirty little secret, right? The elephant in the room at the NFL where, we're never going to – we'll make the sheets. We'll wash them, but we're never going to lay down in bed with sports gambling and betting. Well, guess what? You are. So now all of a sudden you start to raise more eyebrows and questions with the integrity of the game. Remember now too, right? All this, you got the profit sharing, you got the revenue from the advertising and the branding and the TV networks. And, I mean, it's so funny, too, because I've watched some of the spots with Flores on other outlets, and I realize they're not going to – some of them are not going to press because they know where the bread is buttered, right? The director, the producer's going to get in the air. Don't push this, don't push this. Why? Because on ESPN, what do you got? You got Monday Night Football. On the NFL Network, what do you got? Thursday Night Football. It's basically owned by the league, so to speak. So the sports gambling element is amazing, and I say it in tongue-in-cheek. I mean, if this is true, if these accusations can be proven and true, then you talk about the feds you mentioned, Andy, and the fact that Ross can really be down, without the paddle, and probably would have to be forced to sell the team.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And look, we can't discount. I can't say it. You can. I mean, you can, but it would be wrong to say it that there's no evidence because we have no idea. We're just going by what's in the lawsuit, and if you're going to bring up text messages as evidence, if you're going to talk about something else, why not show that too in the lawsuit? So I question that there is hard evidence. I think a lot of people do, but at the same time, we can't discount that Brian Flores and his attorneys have zero evidence about this. Maybe they're just holding something back. I mean, that could certainly be possible.
Two more before I let you get out of here. And again, Andy Slater joining me for a couple moments. Rich Quinones here. We'll take you up to 6. Follow him on Twitter at Andy Slater, talk show host, on-air personality. He breaks down a ton of news, by the way, with the great Slater Scoop. Weekdays 3 to 5 on Fox Sports 640. And, of course, iHeartRadio. How do you the end game here, how do you think this is resolved? Do you believe that at the end of the day, Flores they'll have a settlement, he cuts his check, and then we're kind of back to square one? Because what is really going to come about this when we talk about the Rooney Rule? They'll probably just adjust a couple things here and there with criteria and maybe length of interview and maybe cross their T's and dot their I's. But what do you think the end game here is for Flores? And then I want to quickly, before I let you get out of here, get your thoughts on the quarterback situation in Miami as well with Tua.
Oh, I could go another 20 minutes just on that. You can call me back for that one after the Super Bowl. I've done so many shows about Tua. But the end game here, what I think happens, just based on what we know so far, and to be clear, I mean, that could totally change like we were talking about. But I think there will be some change in the NFL about the hiring practices, about the way things need to be documented in these meetings with these candidates. I don't know if we're going to see any major change because in the end, if this lawsuit proves to be nothing at all in federal court and doesn't go anywhere, I don't think the NFL is going to make some major change and say, hey, we've been doing something wrong. And as far as the individual teams go, are they scared about it right now? Take a look at Jacksonville. Jacksonville had Eric Bieniemy, possibly.
Yep.
They had Byron Leftwich.
Byron Leftwich, who I thought would have been the best hire.
And who did they just hire? Doug Peterson.
Yep.
So it's not like there's been some immediate change here. We'll see what happens in the near future. I mean, we still have some vacancies. But I don't, just based on what we have right now and what we have seen, I don't think we're looking at any major changes. And according to Brian Flores, that was his reason for filing the lawsuit. He said, essentially, if he's out of a job forever, but there's change in the NFL, he's okay with that.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. But man, when you've been around the game your whole life and you're passionate about coaching, as he is, and I totally believe that, that's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, just giving all that up, it's very tough. And as far as Tua goes, what I do as a talk show host in Miami is I look at these playoff games and I watch the quarterbacks.
Yep.
And I think to myself, could I ever see Tua doing this? And the answer has been about no 12 times over the past few weeks.
Right.
So to me, if I'm in charge of the Dolphins organization, I ask myself the question, is my guy Tua Tagovailoa going to be able to be here in this spot and be able to do this? And if my answer is no, well, then I need to find a new quarterback. Otherwise, I'm just wasting time. I was a huge Tua believer. I really, really still want Tua to work out. But I look at some of these other quarterbacks in the league, and I just can't see him being able to do that. He doesn't have a lot of weapons.
Right.
Helping him with a running game. They had no running game. Wide receivers other than Jalen Waddle. He does need some help, and he needs a better offensive line. But at the end of the day, I mean, how many excuses can we make? Sure, he needs more around him, and I'm sure the Dolphins will try to help him with that. But I don't see it in him what I see in other quarterbacks around the league come playoff time, and I don't know if that's ever going to be able to happen. So the Dolphins probably need a new quarterback.
Yeah, and to close it out, you're right. I think these playoffs were eye-opening to a lot of fans. I mean, I'm a Giants fan. As I mentioned, we got the Jets in our backyard, the Eagles. You look at the quarterback play with those teams respectively, you see what's going on with some of these young guns, i.e. the Burrows of the world, and even Herbert, even though they didn't get in, and you think to yourself, oh, man, we are light years off. We are far off. Again, he's Andy Slater.
You take a look, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, but you take a look at the AFC.
Oh, stacked.
And, okay, Burrow, Josh Allen is in the Dolphins division. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert.
I know.
These are just AFC quarterbacks.
Crazy.
The Dolphins were up against Tom Brady for 20 years.
Yeah.
That was the division. You had to beat Tom Brady. And then they get an opportunity. Okay, Brady's out of the AFC East, and now they have to deal with Josh Allen. But
right.
I guess Stephen Ross, I mean, I don't know if he really did offer that, but I'm sure he wanted to lose football games because then the opportunity would have been there for the Dolphins to have Joe Burrow, but it just never works out for the Miami Dolphins, so that part's not a surprise.
Hey, look, maybe Flores was like, he counted down and said, make it 200,000. You got yourself a couple L's here. I don't know. So we don't know. We say it in tongue-in-cheek. And, again, it's Andy Slater. Give him a follow on Twitter, at Andy Slater, talk show host, on-air personality. He breaks a ton of news with the Slater Scoop as well. Weekdays 3 to 5 on Fox Sports, 640 iHeart Radio. Andy, greatly appreciated, pal. And like I said, if you ever want to get a little New York, Jersey, Philly perspective, talk a little sports gambling, we can definitely do that. And I hope to get you on again.
Yep, no problem. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right, you got it. Be well, pal.